Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for choosing this quiet moment. Perhaps today felt longer than you expected. Perhaps you looked at the clock too many times. Perhaps you wondered if you were moving slowly. If you are here, you do not need to hurry anymore. You only need to listen. Let the words walk beside you. Let the story find its own pace. There is no test here. There is no pressure. There is no perfect pronunciation waiting for you. Only simple English. Only quiet moments. Only one small story. If this is your first visit, welcome. And if you have listened before, welcome home. This little place is growing one story at a time. One quiet evening at a time. One gentle step at a time. Maybe you are learning English. Maybe you are starting a new job. Maybe you are waiting for a dream. Maybe you are waiting for yourself. Many people believe that life is a race. The flowers do not. The river does not. The moon does not. The old tree beside the road has never hurried. Still, every spring, new leaves quietly appear. Some mornings arrive with bright sunshine. Some arrive with soft clouds. Yet every morning arrives exactly when it should. Perhaps people are not so different. Tonight, our story begins with an old clock. It hangs above a small bakery in a quiet village. Its wooden hands move slowly. Tick, tick, tick. Children say it is too slow. Visitors laugh when they see it. Even the birds seem faster. But the baker smiles every morning. He opens the little door. He lights a warm candle. He begins making bread. And every evening, the bread is ready. Never early, never late, always on time. A little boy passes the bakery every day. Sometimes he stops. Sometimes he keeps walking. But today, he looks at the old clock for a little longer. Its hands move so slowly that they almost seem asleep. He wonders, how can something so slow always know the right time? The baker notices the boy. He opens the window. Warm air carries the smell of fresh bread into the street. "Good morning," he says. The boy smiles. "Good morning. What are you looking at?" "The clock." "What about it?" "It feels slow." The baker looks up. Then he laughs softly. It is never worried about being slow. It simply keeps moving. The boy says nothing. A small orange cat stretches beside the door. It closes its eyes. The morning sun touches its fur. It does not hurry. The flowers beside the bakery do not hurry. The clouds above the village do not hurry. The bread inside the oven does not hurry. Everything seems to trust time. The boy looks at his own notebook. Inside, he has written many English words. Some are easy. Some are difficult. Some he remembers. Some he forgets. He quietly closes the notebook. Maybe learning is like baking bread. Maybe growing is like the old clock. Maybe becoming stronger happens one quiet day at a time. The baker places a small loaf of warm bread into the boy's hands. It is still hot. The boy smiles. It smells wonderful. The baker nods. It needed time. The boy looks at the old clock once more. Tick, tick, tick. The sound is soft, almost like footsteps. Small, steady, patient. The road ahead is long. The morning is still young. The little village is slowly waking up. Some windows open. Some birds begin to sing. Some flowers turn toward the light. And somewhere, without anyone noticing, Another ordinary day quietly becomes another beautiful beginning. Take a slow breath. The story is only beginning. And perhaps your own time is only beginning too. The old clock continued its quiet work. Tick, tick, tick. The little bakery slowly filled with the smell of warm bread. Outside, the village was waking up. A bird landed on the wooden sign. A cat stretched in the morning sun. The baker smiled at both of them. Then he looked toward the road. Two children were walking to school. One walked very fast. His steps were quick. His bag bounced with every movement. He looked at the clock. Oh no, I am late. He hurried across the little bridge. He almost forgot to enjoy the morning. Behind him, another child walked slowly. She stopped beside a small flower. She watched a butterfly land on one white petal. She smiled. Then she continued walking. The first child reached the bakery. He looked tired. The second child arrived a few moments later. She looked peaceful. The baker opened the door. Good morning. Good morning. The first child asked. Am I late? The baker looked at the old clock. No. The second child looked surprised. But I walked much slower. The baker laughed softly. The school bell has not rung. The two children looked at each other. One had been running. One had been smiling. Yet both arrived together. The baker placed two small rolls on the wooden table. Fresh steam rose into the air. He pointed toward the bread. Do you know why bread tastes good? The first child answered, because it is warm. The second child answered, because it takes time. The baker smiled. I like both answers. He broke one roll into two pieces. The smell became even richer. Warm butter slowly melted inside. The first child ate quickly. 3 bites. Then nothing. The second child held her bread with both hands. She looked at the little steam. She watched it disappear. She took one small bite. Then another. The baker quietly cleaned the counter. He never hurried. He never looked worried. The old clock continued moving. Tick, tick, tick. Outside, a little orange cat was still sleeping. It did not know about schedules. It did not know about success. It simply rested in the morning light. The first child looked at the cat. I wish I could be that relaxed. The baker smiled. The cat trusts the morning. The second child looked through the window. Clouds moved slowly above the hills. Flowers turned toward the sunlight. Leaves danced with the wind. Nothing seemed to compete. Nothing seemed to compare itself with anything else. The old clock made another quiet sound. Tick, tick, tick. The baker looked at the children. When I was young, I wanted to grow faster. I wanted tomorrow to arrive today. He looked at the bread. But bread taught me something. You cannot pull the dough to make it rise. You simply wait. The first child became quiet. The second child smiled. Outside, the orange cat opened one eye. It looked at the sunlight. Then it closed its eyes again. The children laughed. The baker laughed too. For a little moment, the whole bakery felt brighter. The old clock never became faster. The bread never became impatient. The flowers never rushed toward spring. The clouds never chased each other. And somehow, everything arrived exactly when it should. The first child picked up his school bag. This time, he walked instead of running. The second child walked beside him. Their footsteps sounded almost the same. Step, step, step. The baker watched them leave. He gently turned the sign on the door. Open. The old clock smiled in its own quiet way. Tick, tick, tick. Another ordinary morning had quietly become another beautiful beginning. The next morning, the village was covered with soft fog. The hills looked quiet. The trees looked like gentle shadows. The old clock above the bakery continued moving. Tick, tick, tick. The baker opened the window. Warm air escaped into the cool street. The smell of fresh bread slowly mixed with the morning mist. The little orange cat stretched its body. It jumped onto the wooden bench. Then it curled into a small circle. The baker smiled. You always know how to enjoy the morning. The cat closed its eyes. It did not answer. A few moments later, the boy arrived. He carried his notebook under one arm. His steps were slower than yesterday, but they were lighter. The baker handed him a warm cup of tea. Steam quietly danced above the cup. The boy wrapped both hands around it. It feels warm. The baker nodded. So does patience. The boy looked at the steam. It slowly disappeared into the air. It never stays. The baker smiled. It never needs to. Outside, two birds landed on the same fence. One bird immediately flew away. The other stayed. It looked at the flowers. It looked at the sky. It looked at the wind moving through the trees. The boy watched quietly. Why didn't it leave? The baker looked outside. Maybe it likes this moment. The boy smiled. For a while, they listened to the old clock. Tick, tick, tick. Nothing changed. Yet everything kept moving. An old woman slowly walked toward the bakery. She carried a basket full of apples. Her steps were careful. One little girl ran past her. The girl reached the door first. Then she noticed the basket. Without saying a word, she walked back. She picked up one apple that had rolled onto the road. The old woman smiled. Thank you. The little girl smiled too. Then they walked together. One was young. One was old. One walked quickly. One walked slowly. But now, their steps matched. The baker quietly watched them disappear down the road. He turned the bread inside the oven. Not too early. Not too late. Just enough. The boy opened his notebook. He wrote today's date. Then he stopped. He looked through the window again. The fog was beginning to disappear. Little by little, the hills became clear. The trees appeared one by one. The flowers slowly found the sunlight. The baker stood beside him. Do you know why I like mornings? The boy shook his head. Because nothing appears all at once. The light arrives slowly. The birds begin one song at a time. The village wakes one window at a time. The boy looked outside. The old woman was still walking. The little girl was still beside her. The orange cat was still sleeping. The clock was still ticking. The bread was still rising. Everything trusted its own rhythm. The boy picked up his pencil. He wrote one short sentence. Slow mornings grow strong hearts. He read it once, then closed the notebook. The baker placed a loaf of fresh bread into a paper bag. Its warmth filled the little room. Outside, the first full sunlight reached the bakery door. The fog quietly disappeared. The hills did not become taller. The flowers did not bloom faster. The clock did not move more quickly. Yet the whole village felt brighter. The orange cat finally opened its eyes. It stretched once more. It looked at the morning. Then it walked toward the sunlight. Without hurry, without worry, without comparing itself with anyone. The boy laughed softly. He picked up his notebook. The baker picked up another piece of dough. The old woman continued her slow walk. The little girl continued smiling. And somewhere beyond the hills, the sun quietly climbed higher, reminding every flower, every bird, every tree, and every traveler that every beautiful day begins, one gentle moment at a time. The boy left the bakery with warm bread in his hands. The paper bag felt soft. The bread was still warm. He could feel the gentle heat through the paper. The street was quiet. Only a few people were awake. A bicycle rested against an old tree. A little dog slept beside a flower pot. Nothing seemed to hurry. The boy crossed the small bridge. The river moved below. Slowly, steadily, the morning light rested on the water. Tiny waves carried little pieces of sky. The boy stopped. He leaned against the wooden rail. The bread was warm. The wind was cool. The river was quiet. Everything felt balanced. An old man appeared from the other side. He carried a wooden bucket. Inside, there were small white flowers. The flowers moved gently every time he walked. "Good morning." The boy smiled. "Good morning." The old man stopped beside the bridge. For a long moment, they looked at the river together. No one needed to speak. A leaf landed on the water. It slowly floated away. The boy followed it with his eyes. "It looks slow." The old man nodded. "So does the river. But it always reaches the sea." The boy became quiet. The old man placed the bucket on the ground. One little flower had fallen onto the bridge. He picked it up carefully. He did not rush. He simply placed it back. The boy watched every movement. "You move very slowly." The old man laughed. "I used to walk fast." "What changed?" "I started noticing things." The boy looked around. The river, the clouds, the bridge, the flowers, the sunlight, the smell of fresh bread. Maybe they had always been there. Maybe he had simply walked too quickly. A bird landed on the wooden rail. It looked at the water, then at the boy, then at the flower. It stayed for only a few seconds, but somehow, those seconds felt complete. The old man opened his hand. Inside, there was a tiny watch. It was old. Its leather strap was worn. Its glass carried small scratches. The second hand moved quietly. Tick, tick, tick. It belonged to my father. The boy looked closely. "It still works." The old man smiled. It never tried to become faster. The wind became warmer. The clouds slowly opened. Sunlight reached the bridge. Every white flower inside the bucket seemed brighter. The boy opened his notebook. He looked at an empty page. He thought about the bread, the river, the little leaf, the old watch. Then he wrote one sentence. "The quiet road is still the right road." He read the sentence again. The old man nodded. "Keep that one." The boy closed the notebook. They continued standing on the bridge. People slowly appeared in the village. A woman opened her little shop. A child waved from a window. The baker carried another tray of bread. The orange cat stretched under the morning sun. Everything was waking up, one gentle moment at a time. The old man picked up the bucket. The boy picked up the paper bag. They smiled. Then they walked in different directions. The bridge stayed behind. The river continued flowing. The flowers continued dancing in the wind. The little watch continued counting quiet seconds. And the warm bread slowly filled the morning air with a simple reminder. The best things are often still becoming. The morning became brighter. The fog quietly disappeared behind the hills. The boy walked along the little river. The paper bag was lighter now. Only one piece of bread remained. He planned to save it for later. The river made its usual sound. Soft, steady, patient. The same sound. Every morning, every evening, every season. The boy liked that. Some things never hurried. Near the water, he noticed someone sitting on a large stone. It was a little girl. She wore a blue hat. Both hands were closed tightly. She looked worried. The boy walked closer. "Good morning." The little girl looked up. "Good morning." Neither of them spoke for a moment. The river continued flowing beside them. Finally, the girl opened one hand. Inside, there was a tiny seed. "I planted one yesterday." The boy smiled. "And?" She pointed toward the ground. Nothing happened. The boy sat beside her. He looked at the empty soil. It looked exactly the same. Brown earth, small stones, tiny pieces of grass. Nothing more. An old woman slowly approached from the path. She carried a wooden basket. Inside, there were flowers of many colors. Red, yellow, white, purple. She noticed the two children. "What are you looking at?" The little girl held up the seed. "I think it forgot to grow." The old woman laughed softly. She placed the basket on the grass. Then she picked up another seed. This one was planted last week. She pointed toward a small green sprout. It was almost invisible. The children moved closer. "It is so small." The old woman nodded. "Everything beautiful begins where nobody is looking." The wind moved through the flowers. Tiny petals danced in the air. The river reflected little pieces of sunlight. The boy looked at the little sprout. Then he looked at the seed resting in the girl's hand. One was hidden. One was waiting. Neither looked like a flower, yet both carried spring inside. The old woman sat beside them. "When I was young, I planted flowers every year. Some grew quickly. Some waited much longer. Do you know which ones I remember most?" The little girl shook her head. "The slow ones." The children became quiet. A butterfly landed on one white flower. It stayed only for a second. Then it flew away. No one tried to stop it. No one tried to hurry it. The boy opened his notebook. He slowly wrote today's sentence. "Some seeds bloom after quiet days." He looked at the words, then at the river, then at the flowers. Everything seemed to agree. The little girl smiled for the first time. She carefully placed the seed into the soil. She covered it with both hands. Very gently, very slowly, the old woman poured a little water over the earth. Nothing changed. Nothing appeared. The ground still looked empty, but nobody looked disappointed anymore. The boy reached into his paper bag. He broke the last piece of warm bread into 3 small pieces. One for himself, one for the little girl, one for the old woman. They ate together. The bread was simple. The morning was simple. The river was simple. Yet the moment felt complete. Far away, The old bakery clock quietly continued its work. Tick, tick, tick. The orange cat stretched in the sunlight. A bird landed on the bridge. The flowers moved with the wind. The little seed rested beneath the earth. It did not know that someone believed in it. Perhaps that was enough. Perhaps hope grows best when it is given time, silence, and gentle hands. The boy closed his notebook. He stood up. The little girl waved goodbye. The old woman picked up her basket. The river continued toward the sea. The children continued toward tomorrow. And somewhere under the quiet soil, another beautiful story had already begun. The afternoon arrived quietly. The morning fog had disappeared. Warm sunlight rested on every rooftop. The boy walked along a narrow street. His notebook was safely inside his bag. The old bakery was behind him. The little river was somewhere nearby. He could still hear the gentle sound of moving water. Step, step, step. His footsteps matched the quiet rhythm of the village. At the end of the street, he noticed a small tea shop. The windows were open. A soft bell moved above the wooden door. The sound was light, almost like a bird singing in the wind. The boy looked inside. Only one person was there. An old woman slowly poured tea into 2 small cups. Steam rose into the afternoon light. She smiled when she saw him. "Would you like to come in?" The boy nodded. The room smelled of flowers and warm wood. Sunlight rested on an old table. Beside the teapot, there was a little hourglass. Golden sand quietly moved from the top to the bottom. The boy watched without blinking. "It is slow." The old woman smiled. "It has always been slow." She turned the hourglass over. The sand began its journey again, grain by grain, without noise, without hurry. The boy wrapped both hands around the warm cup. The tea smelled like honey and flowers. Outside, 2 butterflies danced above a garden. One flew high. The other stayed close to the flowers. Neither seemed wrong. Neither seemed late. The old woman followed the boy's eyes. "My grandmother loved butterflies. She used to say something every spring." The boy looked up. "What did she say?" The old woman smiled. "Flowers never open together." For a moment, only the sound of the little bell and the hourglass filled the room. The boy looked at the tiny grains of sand. Each one seemed too small to matter. Yet little by little, the top became empty, and the bottom became full. The old woman quietly added hot water to the teapot. The leaves slowly opened. The color became deeper. "You cannot hurry tea," she whispered. "If you do, it loses its kindness." The boy laughed softly. "Can tea be kind?" The old woman nodded. "So can time." Outside, a little boy ran across the road. Behind him, his grandfather walked with a wooden cane. The little boy reached the tree first. Then he turned around. He waited. When the old man finally arrived, they smiled at each other. No one looked disappointed. No one looked impatient. The boy watched through the window. He opened his notebook. Today's page was empty. He thought about the bread, the river, the little seed, the butterflies, the hourglass. Then he wrote one sentence. "Gentle things take gentle time." The old woman looked at the notebook. She nodded. "I hope you never forget that." The sunlight slowly moved across the table. It touched the teapot, the little hourglass, the warm cup, and finally, The notebook. The last grain of sand quietly reached the bottom. The old woman turned the hourglass again. Without thinking, without counting, simply because that is what it was made to do. The boy finished the last sip of tea. It was warmer than he expected, sweeter than he expected, slower than he expected. He stood up. "Thank you." The old woman bowed her head. "Come again." The little bell moved as he opened the door. A gentle breeze welcomed him outside. The butterflies were still dancing. The river was still flowing. The bakery clock was still ticking. The orange cat was sleeping in the same sunny place. The village had changed almost nothing. Yet somehow, the afternoon felt completely different. The boy smiled. He placed one hand on his notebook. He no longer wondered if he was too slow. The flowers were still blooming. The tea was still warming. The sand was still falling. The road was still waiting. And so was tomorrow. He took one more quiet step, then another. The sunlight walked beside him. The wind carried the smell of fresh bread. Somewhere, an owl rested in the shade of an old tree, waiting patiently for the evening, never asking the sky to arrive any sooner. The sun was slowly moving toward the west. The afternoon light became softer. Long shadows rested across the little village. The boy walked without thinking. His notebook felt light inside his bag. His heart felt even lighter. Soon, he reached a small garden. A wooden gate stood open. Inside, flowers of many colors quietly greeted the wind. Some flowers were fully open. Some were only beginning. Some were still small green buds. An old gardener knelt beside the path. He gently poured water onto the soil. Drop, drop, drop. The boy smiled. "I know you." The gardener looked up. "And I know you." They both laughed. The boy slowly walked through the garden. He stopped in front of two flowers. One was tall, bright yellow, open to the afternoon sun. The other was much smaller. Its petals were still closed. The boy pointed. "This one is faster." The gardener stood beside him. "Is it?" It already bloomed. The old man looked at the smaller flower. "It is simply living a different morning." The boy became quiet. A bee landed on the yellow flower. Then, without any hurry, it visited the smaller one too. The bee did not choose the biggest flower. It simply followed its own path. The gardener noticed the boy watching. "When I was young, I always compared my garden. My neighbor's flowers were taller. His trees grew faster. His tomatoes were bigger." The boy listened carefully. "What happened?" The gardener smiled. "I forgot to enjoy my own garden." The wind moved gently across the flowers. Every stem danced in a different way. No two flowers moved together. Yet somehow, the whole garden looked beautiful. A little turtle slowly crossed the path. The boy laughed. "It is so slow." The gardener nodded. "So is spring. So is sunrise. So is healing." The turtle continued walking. Step, step, step. It never looked behind. It never looked at the birds flying above. It simply carried its little home forward. The boy watched until the turtle disappeared beneath a leaf. He opened his notebook. Today's page waited quietly. He looked at the yellow flower, then at the little green bud, then at the turtle. Finally, he wrote one sentence. "Every flower has its own morning." The gardener looked at the words. He gently nodded. "I wish someone had told me that many years ago." For a while, they sat together on an old wooden bench. Neither of them spoke. The garden did not need words. The bees worked quietly. Butterflies floated between white flowers. The leaves whispered above them. The sunlight slowly changed from gold to orange. Nothing rushed. Nothing competed. Nothing tried to become something else. A little girl entered the garden. She carried a tiny watering can. She carefully watered one small plant. Only one. Then she smiled as if she had watered the whole world. The boy smiled too. Sometimes, small kindness grows quietly. The gardener closed his eyes. The breeze carried the smell of flowers and warm earth. Somewhere, the bakery bell softly rang. The old clock continued its patient song. Tick, tick, tick. The boy stood up. He placed the notebook back into his bag. He looked at the garden one last time. The yellow flower was still shining. The little bud was still closed. The turtle was still walking somewhere beneath the leaves. Nothing had changed. Yet everything had become more beautiful. As he walked home, the evening light followed him across the path. The river reflected the sky. The orange cat slept beside the bakery. The first star quietly appeared above the hills. And the boy realized something. Maybe growing is not becoming faster. Maybe growing is learning to bloom without looking at another flower. The road ahead was still long. The village was still quiet. Tomorrow was still waiting. And that felt perfectly enough. The evening arrived without asking. The sunlight slowly left the rooftops. The shadows became longer. The village became quieter. The boy walked toward the little square. The old bakery was closing for the day. The baker carried a basket of fresh bread. The warm smell still filled the street. The orange cat waited beside the door. It knew that one small piece of bread always belonged to it. The baker smiled. So you came again. The cat blinked slowly. It never looked impatient. It simply waited. The boy sat on the wooden bench. He watched the old clock above the bakery. Tick, tick, tick. The sound felt familiar now, almost comforting. An old traveler entered the square. His backpack looked heavy. His shoes were covered with dust. He stopped beneath the clock. He looked at the sky. Then he smiled. A young traveler arrived only a minute later. His clothes were clean. His steps were fast. He looked at the old clock. Then he looked at the road. Then he looked at his watch. He sighed. I am behind. The old traveler quietly sat beside him. Behind what? My plan. My schedule. My friends. The old traveler looked toward the hills. The last light rested on the trees. I have walked many roads. I have never seen two sunsets arrive at the same speed. The young traveler laughed. Sunsets do not walk. The old man smiled. Neither does time. For a moment, both travelers became quiet. The baker placed two small pieces of bread on the bench, one for each traveler. Steam slowly disappeared into the evening air. The young traveler finished first. The old traveler took one bite, then another. He looked at the sky after every bite. The boy watched them. One finished quickly. One enjoyed every moment. Both finished the same bread, but only one tasted the evening. A little girl walked across the square. She carried a tiny lantern. Its light was small, yet every stone in front of her became visible. The orange cat slowly followed her. Step, step, step. Neither hurried. Neither worried. The baker closed the wooden door. The old clock continued moving. Tick, tick, tick. A cool breeze carried the smell of flowers from the nearby garden. The first star quietly appeared above the village. The boy opened his notebook. He listened before writing. The wind, the clock, the footsteps, the soft sound of the river far away. Then he wrote one sentence. A slow evening is still a beautiful evening. He looked at the words. They felt simple, but true. The old traveler stood up. He placed one hand on the young traveler's shoulder. The road is not going anywhere. You have enough time. The young traveler looked toward the quiet hills. For the first time, he stopped checking his watch. The little lantern continued moving through the square. The orange cat quietly walked behind its gentle light. The baker looked at the old clock one last time. He smiled. The boy closed his notebook. The village slowly disappeared into the evening. One window lit up, then another, then another. No house tried to shine brighter than the others. Together, they made the village beautiful. The boy stood up. He took one slow breath. Tomorrow would come. The bread would rise again. The river would flow again. The flowers would open again. The old clock would continue its quiet song. Tick, tick, tick. And somewhere inside his heart, comparison quietly packed its bags, while patience slowly moved in. The stars watched over the little village. The wind carried the smell of fresh bread through the silent streets. And another ordinary day, without making any noise, became another memory worth keeping. The station was small. Only one wooden bench waited beside the tracks. A single tree stood near the entrance. Its leaves moved gently in the evening wind. The boy arrived just before sunset. He liked this place, not because many trains came, but because everything seemed to slow down. An old station clock quietly watched over the empty platform. Tick, tick, tick. Its hands moved with the same calm rhythm as the bakery clock. The boy sat on the bench. His notebook rested beside him. The orange sky slowly became deeper. A little sparrow landed near his feet. It picked up something invisible. Then it flew to the tree. For a while, nothing happened. And somehow, that felt wonderful. An old station keeper slowly walked across the platform. He carried a lantern. Its warm light gently moved with every step. He noticed the boy. Waiting for someone? The boy smiled. I don't think so. The old man nodded. Sometimes I come here for the same reason. They sat together. Without speaking, the wind continued its quiet song. Somewhere far away, a train whistle softly echoed across the valley. The sound arrived before the train. Then silence returned. A young woman hurried onto the platform. She looked at her watch, then at the tracks, then at the clock. I hope I'm not late. The station keeper smiled. The train always arrives when it arrives. She laughed nervously. She checked her watch again. The boy watched her. A little later, another woman entered the station. She carried a basket of flowers. She sat beneath the tree. She never looked at the clock. Instead, she watched the evening sky. The first woman walked back and forth. The second woman quietly smelled the flowers. The station remained peaceful. The old man pointed toward the tree. Every spring, the birds return. They never carry watches. They never miss the season. The boy looked up. 3 sparrows rested on one branch. One looked left. One looked right. One simply closed its eyes. The station keeper opened his lantern. The light became a little brighter. You know, people often wait for perfect moments. But trains, flowers, and sunsets never wait for perfection. The young woman finally sat down. She took one deep breath. For the first time, she looked at the evening sky. It is beautiful. The woman with flowers smiled. It has been beautiful all day. Everyone became quiet. The wind moved through the tree. The leaves answered softly. The station clock continued moving. Tick, tick, tick. The boy opened his notebook. He listened before writing. The wind, the birds, the lantern, the distant river. Then he wrote one sentence. Peace arrives when you stop chasing time. Just then, a train slowly appeared beyond the hills. No one ran. No one shouted. It arrived with quiet confidence. The doors opened. The woman carrying flowers stood up. She smiled at the station keeper. She stepped inside. The young woman followed. But this time, she was smiling too. The train gently disappeared into the evening. Its sound slowly faded. The station became quiet again. The tree remained. The bench remained. The clock remained. The lantern continued glowing. The station keeper stood up. He looked toward the empty tracks. Then he whispered, "The next train will come." It always does. The boy placed his notebook into his bag. Above the station, the first stars quietly appeared. None of them hurried into the night. One by one, they simply arrived. And that was enough. The boy smiled. He walked home beneath the quiet sky. Behind him, the old station clock continued counting gentle moments. Ahead of him, tomorrow was already waiting. Without asking anyone to run, the village became quieter as the evening grew deeper. One by one, the little shops closed their doors. The baker placed the last loaf of bread on the wooden shelf. The old clock continued its quiet work. Tick, tick, tick. The orange cat was already asleep beside the window. Its tail moved gently in a dream. The boy walked slowly through the empty street. The cool air carried the smell of bread, flowers, and the river beyond the bridge. Nothing felt lonely. Everything simply felt still. A small light appeared ahead. It came from a tiny house at the end of the road. The door was open. Inside, an old woman was lighting candles. One candle, then another, then another. The room slowly became warm. The boy stopped at the doorway. The old woman smiled. "Good evening." "Good evening." She placed a small candle on the table. Its flame moved softly whenever the wind entered the room. The boy watched quietly. "It is very small." The old woman nodded. "So is a seed. So is a star. So is a kind word." The boy sat beside the table. Neither of them hurried. The candle never tried to become a fire. It simply gave enough light for the next moment. Outside, the wind gently moved through the trees. The leaves whispered together. Somewhere, an owl called from the forest. The sound stayed in the evening air, then slowly disappeared. The old woman poured warm tea into 2 cups. Steam rose between them. The candlelight danced through the quiet room. The boy opened his notebook. He looked at the empty page. For a long time, he wrote nothing. The old woman smiled. "You do not have to hurry your thoughts." The boy nodded. He watched the little flame. It never became taller. It never became brighter. Still, the whole room could see because of it. He finally picked up his pencil. He wrote one sentence. A small light is enough for the next step. The old woman gently read the words. Then she looked outside. The first stars had appeared. Only a few. The rest of the sky was still dark. Do you see those stars? The boy nodded. They did not wait for every star to arrive. They simply started shining. The room became quiet again. The tea became a little cooler. The candle became a little smaller. The night became a little deeper. Everything changed. But nothing hurried. The orange cat quietly entered through the open door. It jumped onto a chair, curled into a little circle, and closed its eyes. The boy laughed softly. The old woman laughed too. The candlelight reflected in the window. Inside, one small flame. Outside, one small star. They looked almost the same. The boy closed his notebook. He carefully carried the little candle to the doorway. The path home was still dark. He could not see the end of the road. He could only see the next few steps. And somehow, that felt completely enough. He thanked the old woman. She nodded without saying anything. The boy walked slowly toward the village. The candle moved gently in his hands. Behind him, the tiny house became smaller. Ahead of him, warm lights quietly appeared in the windows. The bakery was dark now. The old clock still moved. Tick, tick, tick. The river still flowed beneath the bridge. The wind still carried the smell of trees. Above the silent village, more stars slowly filled the sky. None of them rushed. None of them compared their light. Each one quietly became part of the night. The boy looked at the little candle once more. Its flame was small. Its light was gentle. Its warmth was real. He smiled. Perhaps tomorrow did not need 1,000 answers. Perhaps tomorrow only needed one small light, one quiet step, and enough patience to keep walking. The road welcomed him home. The stars stayed above him. The old clock continued counting peaceful moments. And somewhere, without making any sound, hope quietly stayed awake until morning. The village was still sleeping. The streets were empty. The windows were dark. Only one small light could be seen. It came from the little bakery. The baker quietly opened the wooden door. Cool morning air entered the room. He smiled. The old clock above the door was already awake. Tick, tick, tick. Nothing about it had changed. The hands still moved slowly. The sound was still gentle. The orange cat stretched beside the warm oven. It blinked once. Then it sat beside the window, waiting for the first sunlight. The baker began making bread. Flour quietly covered the wooden table. Warm water met the dough. Strong hands slowly folded and shaped it. No movement was wasted. No movement was rushed. Outside, the sky slowly became lighter. A pale blue appeared above the hills. Then soft pink. Then quiet gold. The boy walked through the empty street. His notebook rested under his arm. Inside, a yellow leaf waited between two pages. A smooth stone rested beside it. Short sentences filled every chapter. Every flower has its own morning. Gentle things take gentle time. The quiet road is still the right road. A small light is enough for the next step. The boy smiled. He reached the little bridge. The river was already awake. It never asked the mountain to move. It never asked the morning to come faster. It simply flowed, one quiet moment at a time. A little bird landed on the wooden rail. Soon another bird arrived. One sang first. The other listened. Then they changed places. Neither one tried to become the other. The boy watched until they flew away. The old gardener appeared from the path. He carried a tiny seed in his hand. The old woman from the tea shop slowly followed behind him. She carried 2 warm cups. The station keeper arrived with his little lantern. The traveler smiled. The little girl waved. Even the orange cat quietly crossed the bridge, as if it belonged to every story. Nobody seemed surprised. Everyone simply stood beside the river. The sun slowly climbed above the hills. No sound announced its arrival. No voice hurried the light. The flowers opened one by one. The trees accepted the morning. The river accepted the sky. The village accepted another ordinary day. The baker handed warm bread to everyone. Steam rose into the cool air. The old woman poured tea. The gardener gently placed the tiny seed into the boy's hand. "It is still small." The boy whispered. The gardener nodded. "So is this morning." Nobody spoke after that. They simply watched the sunlight move across the water. The first light touched the bridge, then the flowers, then the old clock, then the bakery window, then the little notebook resting in the boy's hands. The pages became warm. The boy slowly opened to the final page. For a long time, he looked at the empty space. The river continued flowing. The birds continued singing. The bread continued rising. The tea continued warming cold hands. The cat quietly closed its eyes. The old clock quietly counted another gentle minute. Tick, tick, tick. The boy picked up his pencil. He wrote only one sentence. The sunrise has never been late. He looked at the words. Then he looked at the hills. The old gardener smiled. The baker smiled. The old woman smiled. The station keeper smiled. The little girl smiled. Even the orange cat opened one eye, as if it understood. The boy closed the notebook. He placed one hand over its cover. The wind moved softly through the trees. A butterfly crossed the bridge. The river carried little pieces of golden light toward the sea. Everything was exactly where it needed to be. Every flower, every bird, every cloud, every quiet heart. The boy took one slow breath, then another. He no longer wished to become faster. He no longer wished to become someone else. He simply wanted to keep walking, one gentle step at a time. If today feels quiet, let it be quiet. If today feels slow, let it be slow. If today feels ordinary, remember this morning. The bread will rise. The flowers will bloom. The river will keep flowing. The stars will return. And somewhere inside you, something beautiful is already growing. Thank you for spending this quiet moment with English Owl. Take one small step today. Trust your own time. We will be here, waiting with another story, another sunrise, and another peaceful walk. Until then, take good care of yourself, and see you in the next story.